All right, well, my name is Marcus Smith, and I'm a senior from Bolingbrook, Illinois, studying political science and public policy. And I guess the story I chose to write on my arm is from this past summer, an experience from then. I was an intern for the Iraqi Young Leaders Exchange Program, which was run out by World Learning in Washington, D.C. And essentially what we did was we paid for 100 high-achieving Iraqi undergraduate students to come to the U.S. for a month long to explore different themes of like social entrepreneurship and civic engagement. And it started off like as any normal conference I've been to, with different workshops and sessions where students talked about like their short-term and long-term goals and how they plan to reach them. But then the longer we went through and the more in-depth we got, I realized how much more difficult it was for them to attain certain goals, just specifically due to the social and political institutions in their country. I guess I'll save the political monologue, but I felt a little bit even more sense of guilt because a lot of the problems in their country was essentially due to our inadequate regime change in the early 2000s when the US government went into Iraq. And so I remember one story was when one of my students, Mohammed, he was talking about the difficulties he had starting up his own nonprofit advocating for human rights because his village was undertaken by ISIS. And I just remember thinking, I was like, whoa, like this is like surreal, honestly. You hear stories of the news about people who are affected by this, but then it's not until you see someone's face. And we eventually, we became friends throughout the month. And just to know that somebody was affected by this, it made me feel guilty because essentially the only difference between him and I was like circumstance. And we talked a lot, and I talked to him and asked, like, how can you not feel any animosity towards me, towards like our other program coordinators, or anyone in America for essentially what our country did to yours? And then I'll never forget what he said because it was really strong and powerful. He said, it wasn't you specifically who was in charge of a military intervention, and just to know that like there's people in America like you and like these coordinators who were investing their time and money and energy for us to have this experience just means so much to me. And I remember just being so like moved by that because, and that's eventually when I was like telling this story for Dear World. I chose to write, I can do anything but not everything, because that moment really taught me that even though I single-handedly couldn't restore political stability in Iraq, I feel like I really made an impact on their lives, and that was something that I always feel very grateful for.